Thursday Night Football is on, and it's only on Prime Video.
That's going to be caught!
This week, the Minnesota Vikings head west to face the Los Angeles Chargers.
They'll take that all day.
Coverage begins at 7 p.m. Eastern with football's best party. TNF Tonight, presented by Verizon. Not a Prime member? Not a problem. Simply sign up for a 30-day free trial. It's the Vikings and the Chargers, Thursday at 7 p.m. Eastern, only on Prime Video. Restrictions apply. See Amazon.com/Amazon Prime for details.
Welcome to DSC's Campfires with Larry Weissoon, a unique blend of hunting, fishing, wildlife conservation, and the outdoor lifestyle. DSC's Campfires is brought to you by DSC, Conservation, Education, and Advocacy. Hornady, accurate, deadly, dependable. Taurus, award-winning revolvers and pistols. Stealth Vision, high-tech, precision-driven equipment for today's modern hunter. Mossberg, American-built, American-strong. Vineyard Max, deer attractants created for the aroma of success, game feeders, and other hunting products. Red 55 Winery, signature wines from Emmy Award-winning country artist Miranda Lambert, owned by Rick and Beverly Lambert. And the Choctaw Hunting Lodge, home of some of the finest hunting in North America. Now, here's Larry.
Campfire sometimes takes a lot of different things into consideration. When last I left you, I had one afternoon left to hunt black bear there in Maine. Now, over the years, I've been so very fortunate to, in the very last moments of the hunt, take an animal. And with the last afternoon coming to the to the end of the hunt, things changed a little bit. Unfortunately, my good friend Abe Nafa and his wife Tori had to leave before the last afternoon's hunt. The day broke a little bit cooler, and as the afternoon progressed, a steady wind kind of blew out of the north, and it was actually kind of cool. And that was really kind of the first winds and cooling wind that we had. So it really kind of jacked up my my enthusiasm. I've talked in the past a little bit about some of my hunts for bears, and you may or may not recall, if we talked about grizzly bear hunting in Alaska, that I've been able to take 3 grizzly bear. But what the importance of that hunt, as far as I'm concerned, in so many ways, is that you never give up, because all 3 of the bear that I shot, one on each of those 3 hunts, came within the last 30 minutes of the hunt. So, when it comes down to hunting, you never give up. You go until that gun is put away. And actually with me, I tell people my hunt's not over with until I'm putting that gun in the gun case and getting ready to go to the airport or throwing it in a vehicle to start on my way home. That's kind of the way this last afternoon came. Things were really, really tough in Maine, and I felt so very sorry for Randy and his guides. I know how hard they work, and I know how much time they put in trying to make that hunt successful in terms of taking an animal. And I have to say that some hunts that were unsuccessful in taking animals were every bit as successful in what that hunt was about, and the people that I met and the adventures that I had. And so going into the blind that last afternoon, I had not seen a bear in 5 sittings, actually, and seen very few birds, a few whiskey jacks, one blue jay, and a very minimum of squirrels. There just wasn't a whole lot going on in the forest, and because of the drought that they're into in Maine, which is absolutely horrible, there is very little food in the forest. And as we kind of talked in the last day morning, I had an opportunity to visit with some of the biologists as well too, and they were saying the same thing, that their drought that they had all throughout that northeast, really a lot of the older mature bear who had a decent amount of weight on them and stored up for the winter hibernation, when there was no food available in the forest, decided the best thing to do is just to go to their dens and conserve whatever energy they had stored up and to make it through the year. Now, the beauty of that is that happening and very few bears being taken across the state of Maine, I can only imagine what it's going to be like next year. And I want to come back to that here in just a little bit. But getting back to that last afternoon, I had not lost any enthusiasm or confidence that there certainly would be a bear to show up. To me, you hang on to that very, very last moment. Heath Howe dropped me off, and I walked into my blind and set up and got in there probably about, a little after 1 o'clock or so. Just wanting to be there the rest of that afternoon. That's kind of when we've been going to the bear baits anyway. It was relatively early, and then coming out when it was too dark that you couldn't hardly even see a bear. But also trying to do that not to spook anything off that might accidentally come in very late. That last afternoon, my intentions were, all the way throughout, was to try to shoot a bear with my Taurus Ragent Hunter, my 454 Casull loaded with the Hornady handgun hunter ammunition. And I had it topped with a red dot sight from Stealth Vision. It's a 3 MOA with that combination at 50 yards, which is what we were set up from the bait. I could pretty well put them in the same hole. But I also carried with me my my Rossi R95 4570, and it was loaded too with the Hornady Lever Evolution, and I think it's a 325 grain FTX bullet, if I'm not mistaken, if I recall properly, and it too was topped with a red dot sight. Now, I'd hoped to shoot that bear with my handgun. I love hunting with handgun, but sometimes I knew that the situation might not be just what I was looking for. Now, I feel very comfortable at taking shots much farther than 50 yards with that 454 Casull revolver, but not if the animal is moving. And so I had that rifle just in case a bear came in and he was moving slowly but would allow me to take a shot to put him down very quickly when I felt uncomfortable using my handgun. Came down to the last 15 minutes, and seriously, I had not seen hardly anything, even though it was much cooler. It was very comfortable hunting. Maybe 1 or 2 mosquitoes, not very many, even though I had the thermocell on after I saw that first one. But about 15 minutes left of legal shooting light, and I'm sitting there watching the bait, had my binoculars at my side, and the 10 power, if you will, Stealth Vision binoculars that I really like. Not the rangefinders this time, because I didn't feel like I needed to be rangefinding out to 50 yards, which I knew was going to be my maximum shot. But so I'm sitting there and thinking about, well, maybe this hunt's going to come down to the fact that, well, I got 15 minutes left. Let's play it out. So sitting there, and all of a sudden, I saw a black movement back behind the bait, back in the woods. And I knew it had to be a bear because there had not been anything black there previously. And so immediately I grabbed my binoculars now, knowing that from what Randy and Heath and others had told me, there were very few older boars out. They had already gone into hibernation, or their dens, as mentioned. There were still quite a few sows out and young boars, but you do not want to shoot a sow with cubs. And regardless whether it's legal or not, it's just not the ethical thing to do when you've got a sow out there with cubs. And so I immediately, when I spotted what I thought was a bear, got the binoculars on it, watched it go back and forth, back behind the bait a little bit, could tell there were no cubs with it. Now, too, so very often when a sow has cubs and she comes into the bait, it's usually the little ones, the little cubs that come in first. But I wanted to be so extra careful. Last for probably about a minute or two as this bear kind of walked back and forth, finally walked into the bait, and it just kind of kept moving and back and forth. It did not stop to really eat on the bait, but just kind of walked back and forth and around a little bit. And so I decided that if I was going to take this bear, it'd probably be a better idea to use the rifle. That way I could swing a little bit better if I needed to, if I needed to move and as it took a step or anything like that. So I sat there, rifle up, cocked it, dimmed the red dot a little bit so it wasn't quite so bright. So it was a very distinct point rather than blowing out that red dot. which is what you want to do. In bright sunlight, that red dot needs to be bright. In poor sunlight or little light, that's when you want to make that dot smaller and very precise, so it didn't kind of glow and blow out kind of thing. The bear came across the bait, moved a little bit to the left, turned around, moved to the right, and it momentarily stopped just right before he was fixing to walk away. And thankfully, it was broadside. I had the gun up. The dot came up the leg, went behind the leg, and I pulled the trigger. Now, I mentioned the front leg and behind the leg. Most bears' vitals sit a little bit farther back than most people give credit. If you try to shoot one through the shoulders, you might break the shoulders, but chances are you're not going to get any vital tissue such as lung and heart. So I came to up that leg, went back probably about 2 or 3 inches, what I thought was 2 or 3 inches, planted that red dot very solidly, and I knew too that particular rifle, that R95 with the Hornady ammo, is extremely accurate at 50 and even out to 100 yards. Pulled the trigger, and as soon as I pulled the trigger, the bear bolted. I sat there very quietly, hoping to hear the bear crash or maybe a death moan. Now, sometimes you hear people talk about every bear makes a death moan just right before it dies. Well, that's not the case. I've been fortunate. I've hunted bear a lot of different places, particularly black bear and even grizzlies and brown bear. And I don't recall but a very few times hearing a death roar. I've heard them crash a couple of times, but in this instance, it didn't. Now, knowing also that this was not a monstrous bear, I thought it was probably going to be somewhere in the neighborhood of 150 to maybe 175-pound bear, mature bear nonetheless, but thought probably it was a sow just simply because of what Randy and them had been taking. After the shot, as I said, I sat there, didn't hear anything. There was not enough time to get a second shot off before the bear was in the underbrush, so I sat there for just a little bit listening. Couldn't hear anything, and walked back up to the little pasture road, if you will, where they had dropped me off, and had to walk about 300-400 yards to get to where I had cell reception. Called Randy and couldn't get him. I left him a message, and I called called Miss Sharon at the Wilderness Lodge and told her that I'd shot a bear, and if she could to be in touch with Randy to please let him know, and then also called Heath Howe, the guy that I dealt with throughout the hunt. Heath was just an absolute pleasure to be around, and so got in touch with him. Moments later, Randy called and says we're on our way. They got there a little bit after dark. We walked back into where the bear bait was, and I stayed right there because when you're looking for a sign, the last thing you want to do is have a whole lot of people looking around where that bear was, or for that matter, if it was a deer or whatever else. Is you let 1 or 2 people go ahead that know what they're doing, are familiar with that area, to look for tracks, to look for blood, to look for hair. Too many people can ruin the soup, and that's what can happen if you're stepping on sign and all those other kind of things. Sign in this instance being blood and hair and tracks. So I stayed back, and I watched Randy go one way and Heath went another way, and momentarily I heard Randy say, he said, Larry, there were 2 bear. There was another bear that probably came in, looked like about the same size footprint, but we're back on the blood trail. And when he said that, I assumed it was going to be a long track of finding the bear, but they took only about 4 or 5 steps, and I'm not so sure that Heath hadn't even spotted the bear when Randy talked and told me what was going on. And momentarily I heard him say, well, here he is. So I made my way back there and where the bear was, and turned out to be an older sow, probably weighed about 150 to 175 pounds. Beautiful, beautiful hide. No sign of that she'd had cubs or anything like that. So that made me feel even better. We dragged it out, got some back to camp, took a few pictures that night as we cleaned it, hung it for photographs in the morning. Now, while we were cleaning the bear, one of the ladies that was there in camp, who happened to also do the cooking, came to me and she said, "Is there any way possible that I might be able to get a little meat from you for that bear?" And I said, "Well, absolutely." And I said, "But what are you going to do with it?" And she said, "Well," she says, "our local Indian tribe, of which I'm a member, she says, we take the bear meat, we utilize it in all kinds of ceremonies." She said, "We take the bones and use those. We take the claws, whatever we have, and we utilize those." And she said, "We teach the young people how to prepare food and use our things in ceremonies as our forefathers did." She kept talking and telling the story a little bit, and I said, "Well, do you do anything with the skins?" She said, "Oh yes, we tan the skins. We actually teach our young people how to tan skins the old way that our families did many, many, many years ago." So I got thinking about it a little bit as we were talking, and it really made me kind of excited about what they were doing, to see that these long-term traditions at this local tribe or local group of endemic people, what they did and how they did things. So I thought about it a little bit more, and I thought, this is not a big bear. I have taken many bear in the past. I've got all kinds of black bear skins. I've got 2 big black bear skins coming out of Alberta in the next couple of days. By the time I get home, should be there. And so I said, "Well, let me do this. Would you consider allowing me to just donate you the entire bear?" She said, "Oh my God," she was just beside herself. And so long story short there, I ended up donating my entire bear, and I feel so very, very good about it, because I know that every little thing on that bear is going to be utilized. And as you go into the future, those youngsters in that area who are involved with that particular tribe of people can learn how their forefathers did things. And so to me, that was the most appropriate thing to do. Next morning, we took photographs and spent a bunch of time. Of course, that night there was a fair amount of celebrating. Randy, I felt so good about taking the bear because, again, I knew how hard Randy and Heath and all the other guys involved with that particular hunt had been working, and finally it seemed like it had paid off. I mean, I sat for that bear probably close to 40 hours trying to find a bear, so I felt good about all that as well too. Next day, as I said, we took photographs and for different articles and things that I was working on. Did a little bit of stuff for our Sportsman's Life TV show that's on Carbon TV, our weekly show there, and just had an absolutely great time that last day, and then headed back home to Texas. My wife and I spent the night in Bangor, Maine, and got on the plane the next morning. I was feeling great, all that kind of thing. We get home, and I am anticipating another black bear hunt, that one on the Choctaw Hunting Lodge, owned by the Choctaw Nation in southeastern Oklahoma, with Dusty Vickery and his wife Nicole and their staff, but also with Mr. Edgar Cotton and Mr. David Cotton, who have become such great, great friends. And I spend every little bit of time I can with them and on their ranch, too, that's called Becker Bottoms there. And it's kind of almost east of Dallas. Absolutely fantastic place. I'd set up a hunt for David and Edgar and me for black bear during the archery season, which started October the 1st. Got home, as I said, on a Monday night, and with great anticipation of just at home for a week, and then on to the black bear hunt on the Choctaw with David and Edgar. And waked up the next morning early with severe chest pains, could hardly walk, very, very weak. Went to urgent care, and then from there went on to the emergency room in Brenham, and they ran all kinds of tests and sent me to the hospital, really put me in an ambulance and sent me to the hospital in College Station, about an hour away, to St. Joseph's, where I got in the emergency room. They took a bunch more tests and finally got me into a hospital room and chest hurting and all those kind of horrible things. And the doctor came in, the heart specialist came in that evening and said, Larry said, you've got pericarditis, which is excess fluid around your heart. The good news is it's treatable with medication. We're going to get you out of here tomorrow morning, go home, get on the pills, rest up, and you should be just fine. So sure enough, we got on the pills, got home the next day. I'm feeling a little bit, not a whole lot better. Saturday morning arrives, and I'm feeling really bad. So rather than go to the emergency room, went to urgent care, and they ran some tests again as well and came back a few minutes later and said, Larry, you've got COVID. You need to go home. We'll get on over-the-counter drugs and just take it easy. So absolutely do that. Spend about 4 or 5 days kind of in seclusion at the house and taking the pills they give me for the pericarditis. And we go to the Texas coast, my wife and my daughter, Teresa, my wife, Marianne, and my daughter, Teresa. Unfortunately, other daughter, Beth, was busy and couldn't go, but spend like 3 or 4 days down the coast. The whole time I stay in, just barely get out to go have something to eat, get back home. Next morning, getting home, chest is hurting horribly bad, can't breathe, can't hardly walk. Go back to urgent care just to start there, and they run an x-ray and come back in a little bit later and say, Larry, there's a lot of fluid. Looks like you got an infection in the fluid around your heart. Going to get you to College Station. We get to College Station at the hospital. They do a few tests very quickly and then immediately send me from there to the cardiac unit in the same hospital in Bryan, Texas. Run a bunch of tests. Surgeon comes in and says, Larry, you've got excess fluid around your heart. We're going to remove it tomorrow morning. This was at a Saturday night. Sunday morning early, I'm in surgery. They take out a little over 1.5 liters of fluid from my heart, get me back into the hospital room, and put me on, not really any kind of antibiotics or anything, but all those kind of things, leave a drain in so that everything can drain, all that kind of nasty stuff. And long story short, I'm there a couple of days, and they decided to send me home. And but they had taken some of the fluid and done some cultures and the tissue from the pericardial sac that surrounds your heart. And get home, and the next day, thankfully the surgeon called to check on me, and he said, Larry, the pericarditis was caused by a bacterial infection. I've called the pharmacy, and we'll get you on a bunch of antibiotics, and I'll see you in 2 weeks. So as this is being recorded, I'm about a week from seeing the surgeon. I've got a meeting with the heart specialist tomorrow, but from all indications, from all the different tests that they did right before I left, seemed like everything's okay. And the downside is I missed the bear hunt on the Choctaw, which was something I had so truly looked forward to. And not only spending time on the Choctaw with Dusty and Nicole and their staff, but particularly because I was going to be there with Edgar and David Cotton. Mr. Edgar is 85 years old, and I say that he's not old because he's got the energy of somebody a third of his age sometimes, loves to hunt, had so enthused about the black bear hunt, had gone to Shields and had got Chris Lutzinger to help him come up, he and David both, with crossbow combinations. They started practicing immediately and became very, very proficient. Now, when I set this hunt up with Dusty Vickery, our plan is even though I really wanted to kill a bear, I really wanted Edgar and David to kill bear, even if I didn't have a chance to. And so they started baiting. Now, in that part of southeastern Oklahoma, the bear population is increasing, and there are some big bear there as well, too, not just little 2-3-year-old bear, but older mature boars that I think the biggest one they've killed off the The Choctaw proper is 615 pounds. Now, that's a big bear no matter where you go. And they've taken some, that were approaching 300 and maybe one or two that were a little bit over 300. But I was missing that hunt. And so I tried to stay in touch with them as best as I could by phone and by text. But prior to the hunt, as I said, Dusty and I started making some plans, a plan that we hoped would work out. And it was starting to come together just about like we wanted to. Just right, or I was before the hunt, I spoke with Dusty while I was in the hospital, and even before, about a week while I was up in Maine. And he goes, Larry, he said, we've got 2 bears coming on this one bait. He said the other baits they're hitting periodically, but not with regularity. This one bait, he said, I know there are at least 2 bears coming in based on trail camera pictures, and I'm not so sure that there may not be 2 other bears hitting this bait. So, game plan, we're going to put David and Edgar in the same blind. Now, to accompany them, I talked to Jeff Rice, who does a lot of the photography and putting together of our Sportsman's Life digital TV show on Carbon TV and also on YouTube to hopefully be able to film that hunt. So as it gets closer, I called David and Edgar and I said, guys, here's the deal. We've got 2 bears coming in on the same bait. Our plan is for both of you to sit in the same blind. And when one shoots a bear, y'all switch chairs and the other one is up to shoot a second bear. But you have to promise me, too, that if one bear comes in, that you do not get out of the blind until dark to try to make sure that there's not that second bear coming in. Because I got a feeling that second bear is going to be there, maybe with that first bear, but chances are probably a few minutes later. So, opening day of bear season, October 1, the bow season, David and Edgar and Jeff are in the blind before first light, before they can really see. Guess what? 2 bears show up, walk around the feeder, have a donut or 2 or whatever else they're baiting with, and walk away. But walk away just as it's barely getting light enough to where they could see crosshairs against the black crosshairs against black fur or black hair of the bear. So nothing else shows. They go back to the house, have a bite to eat. About 1 o'clock or so, Dusty says, "Okay, guys, you're going back to the blind." Now I realize it's October the 1st. Temperatures are hot. It's in the high 80s. So they get in the blind, all 3 of them, and it is far from comfortable. It's going to be a long sit, and I know that both David and Edgar and Jeff to a point, thankfully they could stand up periodically. So it gets to be 3 o'clock, no bears. That's when they had been coming in. 4 o'clock, no bears. 5 o'clock, still no bears. 6 o'clock, still no bears. And I know that they're getting extremely uncomfortable because of the heat. But two things going on there. I had made David promise that he and Edgar would stay in the blind. Not, even if it got really hot, that I really felt like those bears were going to be coming into that blind. And then 2, the entire time, every time somebody got a little antsy, Jeff would say, "No, guys, just a few more minutes longer. Just a few more minutes longer." Well, guess what? Just about the time the sun was going down or starting to go down, David spotted a bear. And he reached over and tapped his dad's shoulder and said, "Daddy, get ready. The bear's coming." And in walks this bear. Jeff is on the camera. Mr. Edgar is on the crossbow, just waiting for the right opportunity. The bear comes in, walks a little bit to the left, stops absolutely perfectly for a broadside shot. Mr. Edgar pulls the trigger. The bear runs off. They sit very, very quietly. They can hear him thrashing, and then they hear the death moan, which, as I mentioned, occasionally happens, not all the time. Well, immediately there's a certain amount of celebration going on in the blind, and I'm sure they thought about getting out, but I knew Dusty had told them the same thing. Do not get out of the blind when you kill a bear. We'll have to track him down, and I don't want anybody out there stepping on blood trails and all that other kind of stuff. So Again, David tapped his dad, Edgar, on the shoulder and said, "Okay, Daddy, we're switching chairs." They switched chairs, and they're talking softly in the blind about what's going on and what happened. 15 minutes later, in walks another bear. David pulls the trigger on that crossbow, and they're using Raven crossbows with absolutely fantastically accurate crossbows, and hits this bear, and the bear runs the other direction. But between that time, too, they had called Dusty on the phone and said, "Dusty, David told us, Daddy just shot a big bear. Come this way, but don't come get us until dark, unless we call you to come get you, or come get us." So that was right after Edgar had shot his bear. And then 15 minutes later, the other bear walks in. David shoots it. It runs off. They don't hear a death moan on this one, but David felt very, very comfortable and confident in his shot. He calls Dusty and says, "Dusty, come get us. We got another bear down." And according to David, Dusty said, "What? What'd you say?" Kind of thing. Could not believe that there was a second bear down. Well, a little bit later, Dusty arrives, and with the crew, they go one way, recover this monstrous bear that Edgar shot, get it on the back of their ATV, and then go the other direction, find David's bear, not quite as big as the one that Dad shot, get it loaded, and head back to camp. And in the process of all that, while I'm in the hospital bed, I get these texts from Jeff and some photos and going, "We got 2 bears down. Can you believe it? Father and son shot 2 bear out of the same blind using crossbows less than 15 minutes apart." Well, you talk about, basically that had been our plan for that exact thing to happen. That's what Dusty and I had planned all along, and hoping and praying that something close to that might happen. But so that night there was a long celebration. I get a couple of different very short calls, and then next morning it's early. I'm awake. I'm hoping that David is awake, and about that time I get a call from Dusty, and he tells me the entire story. And then a few moments later I get a call from David and Edgar, and they tell me their story as well too. Oh my God, I was so happy, so thrilled. I so wanted those 2 gentlemen to take bears because, and for Dusty's sake as well too, because I know how hard Dusty works and how hard and long he planned for this, and to have the plan that he and I formulated come together to, like it was scripted out kind of thing, was just out of this world good. So absolutely fantastic hunt. Hopefully, the good Lord willing, I'll be there next year. It'll be, and once again, I love the Choctaw. And, if you want to learn more about it, they only take a very limited number of bear. And actually, they were only going to take 1 bear this year, and that I was going to hunt. And then I started talking bear hunting with David and Edgar, and they said they really wanted to go. So I went back to Dusty and says, "Any way we can put on 2 more bear hunters?" And he goes, "We can try it." And then from there, we ended up coming up with a plan of wanting to have those 2 guys shoot bears. But so they do take a limited number of bear. That bear population throughout southeastern Oklahoma is growing, and there are some really big bear there as well too. Dusty, while I was in the hospital, sent me a photograph of a bear that came by a trail camera one afternoon, the only time they saw the bear. And this bear, too, is a 500-pound plus bear. And hopefully, as far as we know, nobody shot that bear this year, and hopefully nobody will, or hopefully somebody will and know what they have. But if he doesn't get shot, I know where I'm going to be September 1, the good Lord willing. I'll be on the Choctaw Hunting Lodge there in southeastern Oklahoma, and you can learn more. Just Google Choctaw Hunting Lodge. That's probably the best way. They have their own website. There's all kinds of ways to get in touch with Dusty to book hunts for everything from bison on down to whitetail deer. And again, when the doctors turn me loose here before too very long, hopefully I'll get up to the Choctaw and spend a little bit of time deer hunting. I love that property, love the people, and can't wait to get back. And I know that Luke Clayton, who I do so much with, including the the Sportsman's Life TV show, but also the weekly radio show that Luke does and his weekly podcast, which is called Catfish Radio with Luke Clayton and Friends. It's just a phenomenal one to do. And so hopefully Luke and I will be up there at the same time hunting together, and we'll take turns filming each other for Sportsman's Life, and hopefully have something to send you there. Now, I mentioned the Sportsman's Life on the Carbon TV. We've also got a YouTube that you can go to now. Unfortunately, I did not get my kill shot of my bear in Maine, but there's a really good storyline there, including fishing for smallmouth bass, which was out of this world as well too. And then with having Jeff in the blind with Mr. Edgar and David, he ended up with some fantastic footage and a great show, and you can see those on Carbon TV, but you can also go to our A Sportsman's Life YouTube, and by the time that this is reaching you, both those will be available to be seen. The beauty of that show is it's a weekly show, and generally if we hunt or fish one week, you might even see that show that same week, but in almost every instance, you're going to see it at least no later than 2 weeks after whatever we did, to see what we actually did and how we did. Now, the beauty of that is that Luke Clayton is such a great outdoor cook, and I have great confidence that he may be one of the best outdoor cooks that I've ever been around. But each episode, or most every episode, Luke does and shows you a recipe of cooking pretty much outdoors, and so very often with a cast iron skillet or a cast iron Dutch oven, and oh my God, does he know how to cook? So that's another bonus, and you can see those on our YouTube channel, A Sportsman's Life, or Carbon TV, and all those other kind of things. And too, I've written several blogs about some of these hunts, and those blogs appear several different places, such as Hornady's Bullet Hole, International Sportsman.com, and even on the Taurus, whenever I'm using Taurus or Rossi, such as with my bear hunt, you can see those, find those like on RossiUSA.com or TaurusUSA.com, and a whole bunch of other places as well too. But if you miss them there, you can go to my website, which is www.larryweisoon.net, and it's LarryWeiSuhn.net, and there's all kinds of things there that you can read and see, and also a link to our Sportsman's Life and some of the podcasts and the other things I do. Plus, you can order the books that I've written recently and those that Luke Clayton has written. Now, you can also read a lot of stuff that I do on Sporting Classics Daily. I do a lot for those guys. So very, truly proud to be there, because to me, Sporting Classics magazine, where I used to serve on staff and write a column called The Long Hunter, to me is the epitome of the outdoor publication, and one that all others should strive to look like. But as I said, you can read a lot of the blogs that I do too on Sporting Classics Daily. So with all that, I guess it's time for me to go take a pill and try to get back on the straight and narrow with all this, so that before too very long, I can not just be talking about hunting, but I can actually be back out there doing it. So for those of you who have kept me in your thoughts and prayers through all this, and I've been very quiet about what was going on, so not a whole lot of people even knew about things until possibly today, so of you hearing this. But appreciate the thoughts and prayers, and hope you've already had an absolutely fabulous hunting season up to this point, and there's a lot more hunting and outdoor activities to come, and a lot more campfires to share. So hopefully you'll share this one with me, or me with y'all, and at the next one of these campfire talks. And one of these days, who knows, we may be actually able to sit across the fire and tell a few stories. I would love for that to happen. I want to thank y'all very much for being with us, and look forward to seeing you here, or having you here around my campfire, DSC's Campfires, next week.
DSC's Campfires with Larry Weissoon has also been brought to you by The Crown Bar in LaGrange, Texas, the Texas Wildlife Association, Double Nickel Taxidermy, and Burnham Brothers Game Calls.